think. Here we're good to go. Good, whenever you are.
The April 22nd, 2025 meeting of the Palm Springs Sustainability Commission is called to order. It's Earth Day, it's celebrate Earth Day. And by the way, it's the 55th anniversary of Earth Day. And I know at least one person in this room who was alive at that time. I remember celebrating it. And we'll be hearing more about Earth Day and Arbor Day activities later at the staff report. Director McCoy, would you please take the roll call?
Absolutely. Okay, Commissioner Alexander.
Present.
Commissioner Barrett sent regrets this evening, as did Commissioner Boyd. Chair Clark.
Present.
Commissioner Cohn. Here. Commissioner Dura sent regrets this evening. Commissioner Forster has submitted resignation from the commission, so he will no longer be joining us. Commissioner Britt.
Present.
Vice Chair Rotner.
Present.
And Commissioner Walker. Present. Great, and we do have quorum this evening with the members present.
Great, thank you. I'd like to welcome everybody tonight. We have with us the members of the Greater Palm Springs Animal Allies, and they're going to be making a presentation on pesticides and wildlife. That's tomorrow, Linda, Paul, and Emmanuel. So welcome this evening, and welcome to our guests on Zoom. The next item is the acceptance of the agenda. The agenda package was distributed last Thursday, April 17th. Is there any discussion about the agenda? Hearing none, the agenda is accepted. And we'll move right into our presentation on pesticides and wildlife by the members of the Greater Palm Springs Animal Allies. So the speakers like to come up to the table.
Sit right here. Okay, and I'm just, give me 1 second to get this screen read for you. So, full screen here. There's too many things on the screen. Just have to leave that to go away so I can expand. Then you're welcome to drive on the shooting.
Okay, wait a minute.
You can just go like up and down here if you like. That's easiest.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Thank you for having us tonight to talk about how Palm Springs can be our role model of a poison and pesticide-free city. It's the perfect subject for Earth Day as we all work toward making our planet more sustainable and a better place to live. We chose Palm Springs because of its progressive policies in sustainability and environmental issues, and because you guys all love animals. We hope that we can pave the way for other cities in the Coachella Valley to also work toward being poison and pesticide free. Poisons and pesticides have, thank you. Poisons and pesticides have a dramatic effect in many areas, but one of the biggest is their impact on wildlife. World Wildlife Fund studies show a catastrophic 73% decline in global wildlife populations in just 50 years. 600 million birds die each year from poisoning. 88% of raptors and 83% of coyotes tested had toxic levels of poisoning in their systems. Mange in coyotes and bobcats is on the rise. Wildlife cannot hunt for food or avoid predators while suffering from poisoning. Even though the first and second generation anticoagulant poisons are now banned, there are exceptions for using these banned poisons, such as agricultural areas, public health safety, wineries, breweries, medical and pharmaceutical companies. Plus, there are new chemicals being introduced all the time to take their place. And these new chemicals are poorly researched, so we don't really know what the effects are. And there are no antidotes for these new chemicals. An Allied Market Research report says that global pesticide market is anticipated to double by 2032. This is the toxic food web, and it shows you the effects of the poisons in a bait box and how they make their way up the food chain. You can see all the animals and insects that can be poisoned by one bait box. And you can see over here on the right-hand side, there's the companion animals, and it goes up to the bobcats, the coyotes, raptors. So it has a very dramatic effect. And if anybody would like a copy of this graphic, it's a great educational graphic. We can email it to you. And it's not just wildlife that's harmed by poisons. Humans, particularly children, have a high risk of exposure. They visit our parks, they roll around on the grass and playing at our school playgrounds. Farm workers and landscapers and agricultural workers are also outside and are more exposed and have higher rates of skin rashes, respiratory conditions, reproductive effects, and cancer. Companion animals can easily catch a rodent, and veterinarians are seeing rising cases of pet poisoning that they don't have antidotes for. Pesticides can significantly harm the environment by contaminating our soil, water, and air. Thank you. Jump to the next one. Yeah. Okay. So why are there so many poisons and pesticides being used in our communities? The biggest problem is our unsecured trash cans and dumpster lids. This is the major attractant for rodents. There are also a few other attractants, places for them to nest and standing water places, but the unsecured garbage lids and trash cans is the biggest issue. We have also made it easy for rodents to get into our structures by not sealing up entry points. And there is a lack of knowledge about what are natural deterrents that can be used instead of these poisons. What is the importance of the rodents and insects in our desert ecosystem? And the dangers, what are the dangers of these poisons and pesticides that we're using? And finally, the fear and hatred of rodents. We have been brainwashed to hate rodents. So what is the role of rodents in our desert ecosystem? Rodents prey on unwanted insects. Rodents sustain carnivore biodiversity by feeding on other animals, such as snakes, fox, coyotes, hawks, owls, skunks, bobcats, bears, and mountain lions. Rodents are also seed dispersers. Rodents can move and aerate soil, and they have burrows that prevent soil erosion from surface runoff. There's active and abandoned burrows that house numerous wildlife species. Now, Paul is going to talk about some of the solutions.
All right, good evening. And I'm so glad that it's on a big screen here because I forgot my glasses and I really can't read it well, but I can read that really well. Thank you. So we're going to talk a little bit about some of the solutions that could be done in a city like Palm Springs, and you'll hear a little bit more about some of the other cities in Southern California and Central California that have followed similar practices. So probably the most important thing is what we're calling earth-friendly management policies. So that would be, we're referring to these wraparound policies that includes restricting chemical pesticides in favor of preventative practices and enrichment strategies. It guarantees the safe use of city buildings, structures, parks, and other recreational areas, and it addresses issues critical to sustainability, clean air, and water while protecting wildlife, pets, and children. And some of you may know this already, but a city like Palm Springs in the state of California has some options, but has some limited options. So the city itself cannot regulate the use of pesticides in the sense of the entire community, but it can certainly regulate the use of pesticides within its own bounds, within its own properties. And that's kind of that's the focus when we're talking about pesticide usage, that's really the focus that we're going to that's where we'll stay focused for the time being, because that's what the city of Palm Springs itself can manage. Is it this one? Yeah, okay. And something that I'm very familiar with as a landscape designer, having worked in the valley for quite a long time, is something that we call integrated pest management. So from a landscape perspective, what that means is you look at solutions to dealing with insects in your landscape that you might consider harmful by really sort of going to the most basic approach, that is dealing with so for example, using things like insecticidal soaps to deal with aphids and things like that, and not ramping up to like the most intensely chemical solution. Or it could also be using plants. It could be using certain plants that distract or detract rodents and detract other kinds of insects or pests that you might not want in your landscape. So from the perspective of the city, integrated pest management can be an effective and environmentally sensitive approach to pest management that relies on a combination of common sense practices. So one of the things we're calling out here is the Palm Springs Unified School District's integrated pest management plan, which still relies quite heavily on the use of chemicals. Those of you who might have had the opportunity to attend a presentation a few weeks ago at the Mizell Center, I think you were there, Roy, got to see that sort of in action. There was an example of what that Palm Springs Unified School District plan looks like. And there are still some very serious chemicals, very dangerous chemicals. And we're also, we're talking about a school, we're talking about schoolyards, we're talking about school buildings. So this is something that, whereas the city can't actually regulate that, can certainly encourage some of the other public facilities and local governments within the city's limits to look at alternatives. But for us, the big thing, and Linda alluded to that earlier, is dumpsters. That is something that the city can handle right now. That is something that could be managed today by the city, and that is enforcing a dumpster ordinance, which basically, and we'll go into that in a minute, into the next slide, I believe it is. So we can strengthen the current ordinance with regard to commercial dumpsters or dumpsters that you might find in an HOA, and enforce the ordinance, and then of course educate the public too. So this is what we see. Now this is not in Palm Springs, I don't think, but this is the kind of thing you could see in Palm Springs. And we were referencing Malibu here, the Malibu dumpster ordinance, because there's a group out of Malibu, and they're the ones that did the presentation a couple of weeks ago, and they're Poison Free Malibu, and their focus initially and has been really this kind of situation where you have a largely packed dumpster with no lid on it, and this is a perfect opportunity for rodents to get into, to access, to find habitat, to find food, and to multiply. And so if we like focus on that first and foremost, we can go a long way towards addressing the concern that people have about rodents in their communities, in public spaces, and so on. And again, this is the type of ordinance that the city can enact. It hasn't had nothing to do with pesticides, but it has to do with maintaining dumpsters that are clean and have lids that close and don't allow for, that oftentimes, I mean, how many times have we seen them right in the back of a commercial building, and it's like half off because it's too heavy, or it's inconvenient, or it's the lid is warped because it's plastic and it's been in the heat for all this time. And now we've just again provided a perfect opportunity for rodents to enter in and continue what we would like them not to do. Another area that where the city does actually have ordinance today is the environmentally preferred purchasing policy. And some of you probably have seen this before and maybe have some experience with it, but just to reiterate, the city shall manage pest problems through prevention and physical, mechanical, and biological controls and use the least amount of toxic chemical pesticide products only after safer approaches or products have been determined to be ineffective. The city will employ landscaping practices consistent with integrated pest management practices, toxic use reduction efforts, water efficiency priorities, and requirements for reduction and proper management of organic waste. While maintaining landscapes, the city of Palm Springs shall not use products containing glyphosate, such as Roundup. Now, I don't know how much of this actually happens. I know from my own experience as a member of this community for a long time and working in lands, particularly with landscape, some of these things like water efficiency priorities are not really being practiced. So my sense is that perhaps there's not a lot of focus on this. Part of this, I think, resides with your Parks and Rec, or I should say, our Parks and Rec department, which has a lot of responsibility for using chemicals and safe landscape practices throughout the city. But this is something that's already exists today. It's just a matter of putting focus back on it and enforcing it. And
Just go away.
yeah,
Sorry.
it's okay.
I know
So,
it's for everyone. but-
Yeah. So here's sort of a common theme that we are going to be repeating over and over again, not just here tonight, but again out in the community. Repel, exclude, and deter. So repel being again something like using plants and plant materials, so materials that are derived from plants that will be deterrent, will keep rodents away. So planting, for example, lavender or rosemary next to your house is a great way to keep rodents away, or using some of these other spices that have been mentioned up here. Number 2 is exclude, which is block and close holes in roofs, foundations, and walls. Linda did reference that earlier. These are basically keeping, because people, I think when we talk about rodents, we really talk about having them in our home. We really don't want them in our home, and that's understandable. So one great way to do that is to make sure that you don't allow them an opportunity to get into your home. A lot of us have things like the vents that are on the side of the building. Maybe it's for the gas fireplace that we run, or a hot water heater or something like that. And that vent usually has a little gap or an opening. Because it's been perhaps added on later and hasn't been properly sealed. So this is a good opportunity to provide some screening that keeps rodents from entering the building, and finally deter by eliminating the things that are going to be interesting to them, the things that are going to want them to come into the space that we're trying to keep them away from. And we also can look at other types of devices, for example, that produce ultrasonic sounds that are not rodent friendly, that keep them away, or to use things like cat litter, for example, because they sense that that's a predator. Owl boxes and raptor perches are also really great. Not only are you giving those birds an opportunity to hang out, but you're also encouraging them to hang out in a way that might help also reduce the rodent population. And with that, I think I'm going to turn this over to Tamara.
Actually, I thought I was supposed to do that last slide, so you just made my job easier. But I do wanna point. Okay, so I want to pay particular attention to that last line, no wildlife must be released in the area where they were trapped. Most species do not do well if you trap them and take them very far at all from where you trap them. right? So that is absolutely a last resort. And if anyone has to go to that last resort, we want you to call us at the Desert Wildlife to advise you. So I just wanted to emphasize that. And I also want to go back. Sorry. So I want to make sure everyone takes a really hard look at that coyote. And that coyote has mange from rodenticide poisoning. And I'm also on the board of the Osgood Land Trust, and we have Prescott Preserve, and we lost 2 coyotes there. They were so ill, so sick from mange, and beyond help. So just really important to emphasize that. Now that I've depressed everyone. Oh, I also want to say, there is, I never thought I would say this, but there are some beautiful dumpster enclosures. And I think I mentioned it, when we were meeting with Poison Free Malibu. Across from the casino in Cathedral City, where they're doing a build up, some, different fast foods and that kind of thing. Those are really cool. That ravens can't get in and rodents can't get in, so I would love to see the city do things like that. Okay, again, as Paul said, there's so many things we can do, and I won't go through this chart, but I just want to emphasize that we, Desert Wildlife Center, really wants to work with the city of Palm Springs. And as Linda said, you're the first city that we chose, in part because most of us live here, but also because of the work that LP and team and all of you are doing. It seems like we could be the leaders. So this was not created by us. This is Marin Sonoma. And we can come up with things in partnership with the city of Palm Springs, with your input and Parks and Rec and Public Works, to really educate our community. So in addition to what we can do as far as city properties and, you know, best practices in the park, it really is about education. And here's just an example. We created a little yard sign. Everybody loves school yard signs. Printed sustainably. And you can see the native species there. You know, lots going on. We can work together with the city to have these signs. People that commit to going pesticide poison free can have a yard sign. I think that would be really cool. And we could go to businesses too. It's not just residential. We want to educate our business owners too. And as Paul said, there's some cities that are doing really tremendous work. And again, in the interest of time, you all have this PowerPoint. Those are live links. You can check out what they're doing. And I started to search around. There's a lot of other places that are working on poison-free policies and really trying to eliminate all sorts of toxins in their environment. This, you know, Rachel Carson, Silent Spring, that was 1962. I wasn't born yet. I'm pretty old. So that was a long time ago, you guys, that this was a concern. And it's still shocking that we haven't done enough yet about it. You know, we're poisoning ourselves, we're poisoning the insects, the plants, the wildlife. It's all connected and we can do better. So, in summary, the next steps that kind of our ask, if you will, is to work with this commission to investigate what we're doing and how we can do better in our own community here in Palm Springs. Work together to educate our community en masse, motivate people to get super excited about this, and then validate things that we can enforce, like the dumpster ordinance, and then celebrate. Let's do some things around wildlife to celebrate that we're helping them or protecting them. That would be amazing. I also would be remiss if I didn't take an opportunity to remind everyone not to trim their trees right now or their hedges. I was aghast. I was gone a little bit today. I came home and a neighbor had trimmed all of the bougainvillea that was coming over onto our yard where I had seen humming nests. And I spent an hour looking for those nests to see if I could help those hummingbirds. Yeah, it's just, we need to educate people about this. Linda answers our Desert Wildlife Center hotline. It is blowing up with calls about displaced nestlings and fledglings. Lastly, our wildlife center grand opening is on May the 17th out in Indio from 9 to 11. It would be awesome if all of you could come out there. We're doing docent-led tours, and it's going to be a lot of fun. That's May the 17th at 9 a.m. And we will take any questions if you have them, and we also have cupcakes made by Emmanuel. And they're very earth friendly, they're vegan, and I believe they're carrots. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there any general discussion? One thing I would like to focus on is to pick up on Tamara's last comments, leading into partnering with the city with things like education and so forth. You probably recall that these folks have been at several of our meetings, and they're very passionate about this topic. They made public comment, and we felt that it would be important and useful for them to make a more general presentation, perhaps to give a broader education to us, and then we could think about ways of perhaps partnering with them to move forward on some of the things that have been brought up. And we have some thoughts about that, but I'd like to start with any general comments and questions before moving on.
So two things. Basically with construction areas. And I know this because I'm living in a construction area, when you start the construction, you displace. So there might be some education in that, and not landscapers, pest control companies. The pest control company I use, they're wildlife friendly. They don't put poison down. But I don't know how many don't know any better. So that might be two places to educate.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Hello. I just wanted to know like how much Coachella Valley Mosquito and Vector Control plays a role in this one, because they go out and educate communities on if there is a rodent infestation or a fire ant infestation. So they are going and helping the communities, but if they are using harmful toxic poison to treat fire ants, that's gonna impact the other wildlife as well. So probably there is a way to involve them when we are looking at the bigger picture, when we are creating educational material, so they can sing the same song just like us. And summer is coming up, and this is a great opportunity for us to work with PSDS maybe, because how often do we clean those dumpsters? How often do we give them a good cleaning with hot water to get the smell off? I mean, we are separating the organics right now at commercial locations, but the smell that's been there is attracting the rodents, even though there is no food. So do we want to have commercial dumpsters on a schedule with PSDS where we give them a wash, desanitize them, and spray them some peppermint oil or essential oil and put them back, so for a month or two, we can test that theory to see if we can deter them?
So I just want to interject, there is a company that just started that is out of service of cleaning out trash cans and dumpsters. I don't know how much they charge, but they are attempting to do that kind of.
Just kind of tie into the Scour meeting might be a topic we add for discussion with the team there and start the conversation.
And I do just want to note for the commissioners, later on the agenda, I'm going to give a brief update on environmental and replicable purchasing. I know the team mentioned that here, so just kind of building on some of what they've talked about. So we'll talk a little bit more about that later in the agenda.
So that was a good suggestion from Commissioner Rotner, perhaps tying this in with Sauer. One of the things we've talked about in the past is perhaps forming an ad hoc subcommittee to deal directly with this issue. It could include some of the visitors who are here tonight, perhaps interested commissioners and somebody from the staff. That might be a good way of getting started as well on working some of these things that we would coordinate with the city. So, what are people's thoughts about that? We have one thought.
I mean, I guess I technically don't get a vote, but we're fine to support that. Okay.
Okay, so.
And by we, I mean Christian Wheeler.
Appointments to Christian to support such a subcommittee would do that. How about visitors? I'm sure you would be able.
Absolutely.
Willing to do that.
Yeah, thank you.
Is there anybody from the commission who would like to participate? Okay. Commissioner.
Yeah, I would participate in that as well. Kind of ties in well with Scour, so it's important.
Mhm.
And I do use that waste. I felt like it was OCD the first time we used it, but they come like 3 times a month to clean out the bins and keep them clean and tidy. So it's an I'm finding it useful. So it may be interesting to see at some future date for Scour, maybe have them come in and give us a talk on what their market, how they're approaching larger, I think it's mainly residential likely, but opportunities about, sounds like.
So it sounds like there's a strong interest in having an ad hoc subcommittee. How could we proceed with that?
It's a good question.
And this is, I assume it would be.
Yeah.
As we had staff.
I believe so, yeah. So generally speaking, I think it's mostly just a matter of us being able to coordinate the additional meetings and things like that and figuring out the right role for staff versus commissioners. I think what we've seen so far is that the ad hoc subcommittees that are mostly commissioner driven and led it's a little bit easier for y'all to move stuff along because we're just trying to figure out how to manage that best from staff. But I think in this case, maybe Christian and I can put our heads together on the best way that we can support and convene. I'll also talk a little bit when I talk later in the agenda about how we're starting to think about this from our side too. So maybe maybe commissioners and, the outside group can meet and then we can also bring different working groups together. So we'll just figure out the right way to do that. But Christian and I will put our heads together on that.
So shall we just include that as a discussion at the next commission
I
meeting?
think that makes sense. Yeah, and we'll reach out to the 2 interested commissioners on that too.
You're just kind of topping that off. I think it's important if we do have having staff input as we try and communicate, because it seems like first kind of low hanging fruit is working within the city
Right.
confines already and kind of do what you say kind of and make the impact there. So
Yeah, so we'll talk about it.
So, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And I'll talk about it more later on, but making sure we have other departments. So maybe it's more of a working group than an ad hoc subcommittee, I don't know. So we'll see.
It just doesn't matter what we call it, we have our subcommittees, but subcommittee form where we can run and then report on it every commission.
Totally. Good summer project, I think it is.
Is there any other discussion? I think this is a great presentation. Thank you to our visitors for coming back many times, and it looks like we have a plan to go forward.
Great, okay. Over. Yeah, my escape key doesn't really work. Might take a second. And go back to the agenda.
The next item on the agenda is public comments. I'm assuming that we won't have any public comments, so I'll save a minute by not reading the general introduction to public comments.
We have any other comments this evening?
So then we'll move on to chair's comments.
Sorry, I'm just trying to get the agenda to show up and not just be a bunch of question marks.
And I just have a couple quick ones. One is that we've been talking about the Blue Zones project. There's going to be a community kickoff Thursday, May 15th from 5:30 to 7:30 at the Festival Theaters, which were previously the Regal Theaters. There've been several planning meetings I participated in, Director McCullough has participated in, some others have as well. But I think this is going to be the next step to go forward with what was actually going to be done for the Blue Zones project. So I encourage anybody who's interested to attend that. And you've probably seen the notice about the special joint meeting of the city council and the boards and commissions. It's going to have a depreciation dinner, followed by a special meeting where the commissions can report on what they've been doing the past year. This would be 5 p.m. on June 17th. And the city clerk's office has requested RSVP for them by the 8th of June. One thing we'll probably talk about at the end of the meeting is June 17th would be our normal meeting day. So we have to move the commission meeting to another day. So that's all I have for chair's comments. And then we move to are there any questions? So we'll move on to subcommittee reports, and the first one is standing subcommittee on waste reduction, Vice Chair Rodner.
Thanks. I think Director McCoy is going to talk over some of the items that we went over. She gave us a brief overview at that meeting on the environmental preferable purchasing policy. If I got that right, I'm always messing it up.
Nailed it. Great job.
PPP. And we had a fairly short meeting. We talked about the shredding event and the continued work that the PSDS is doing with auditing commercial buildings and their waste and making sure that they're in compliance. And I think some of the topics that we had today with waste bins and will be a good addition on that. And I think a little more detailed in the report that I did, but that's kind of the general overview.
Any comments or questions? The next is the standing subcommittee on climate action. The report from our April meeting is in the agenda packet. I won't go into any detail. We typically go through the major things that we've been working on, updates on things like the energy efficient upgrade ordinance, the ordinance. You'll be hearing more about some of those this evening, so I won't go through the details of the report. One thing that's getting traction is development of community connectors for the CD link. During I think the month of March, the CBAG had an opportunity for residents to make inputs in terms of where they would like to see connectors to the infrastructure within the city, to the streets, the bike paths, and so forth. And they were looking for people to express their interest in where they'd like to go, what important connections they should be within the city and within the CD link. So more work will be proceeding on that. One thing I did want to point out is that CBAG is actually working on a connector at the north end of Sunrise Way. I think this is quite significant because about a year ago, we heard that that CBAG wasn't going to be responsible for any of the connectors, and now there's an active program going on trying to develop connectors with input from the members of the community. And this goes along with things that we've been talking about. The subcommittee, things that the Blue Zones will be looking at too, in terms of improving the connectivity within the city for people walking or on bicycles. So that's a significant activity. And I think that's all that I have for the climate action side. Comments or questions? Next is ad hoc subcommittee on third strikes, and we have a presentation under new business. So we'll cover that in a minute.
Shuffle that over to that. Yeah.
And the ad hoc subcommittee on leaf blowers. One of the things that we'll be talking about under new business Also is a letter to the news media about leaf blowers. You've all had a chance to read that letter, that draft letter. We'll be talking about that, and requesting a vote to proceed on new business. And one other thing that we've been working on is lawn signs. Commissioner Rick has been pretty much the mastermind behind with assistance from Ben. Yeah, they can report on the signs that have been put up.
Well, we put signs out, well, I didn't. We basically augmented our neighborhood meeting signs at Sunrise Park and put them along Alejo and Amato. And, yeah, that's the report.
Okay.
So we'll see what happens.
Thank you. Any questions? And finally, ad hoc subcommittee on Measure J. Commissioner Rob, Vice Chair Rob.
Yeah, and nothing to report at this time. I think I need to reconvene when Commissioner Boyd's back and maybe set up a regroup at either before or after summer.
So that's the end of subcommittee reports. The next item on the agenda is the director's report. Director McClough.
Yeah, okay, so I have 3 things I wanted to talk through and just warned a few people before the meeting. I did an uncharacteristic thing today, which is I had a latte at 3:30, so we'll see how this goes. But y'all just let me know if I need to go more linear. Okay, so first wanted to start off by highlighting an event that took place earlier today here at City Hall. So Mayor DeHart has instituted a new program called the Spirit of Palm Springs Awards. And 2 of our esteemed commission members, sorry, gotta turn off the, that's not good. Lost my train of thought. Okay, 2 of our esteemed commissioners were recognized in this month's environmentally themed Spirit of Palm Springs Awards. So Chair Clark received the Spirit of Palm Springs Award today, as did Commissioner Walker. So wanted to just take a moment to congratulate them. Vice Chair Rotner has also very kindly brought in a celebratory cake. So we'll have lots of treats afterwards. So hope everyone sticks around for Earth Day celebration. Thanks to Vice Chair Rotner, but wanted to congratulate our 2 commissioners, our chair and our commissioner, for being recognized for embodying the spirit of Palm Springs. So they got some nice little
Well
plaques.
deserved.
Great. Thank you all for your continued advocacy and support in our community. We feel a little less alone knowing that all of you are here working with us. So on that note, we have Earth Day today. So happy Earth Day, everyone. I'm not going to make everyone do the drawing exercise we did in team meeting today, which is what does Earth Day mean to you? But everybody takes turns only drawing one line of the picture at a time. It was really special for me personally. But did want to give Benito a second to talk about our Earth Day event that's coming up on Saturday.
Yes.
And highlight a little bit of what's going on this week.
Yeah, so of course, our Earth and Arbor Day Festival will be this Saturday from 8 to 2 p.m. with tree planting from 9 to 10. So if you guys want to plant a tree, please stop by and visit us and help Christian and I and LP get our hands dirty and do that fun stuff. We're gonna have a couple vendors out there and then some resources for other people. I know we're gonna have Prima Butcher there giving away compost, correct? Yeah, so we'll be doing a composting thing. So we're gonna have a lot of activities. We're definitely expecting a good crowd and turnout. So please make sure you all stop by and hear the mayor give a proclamation. It's gonna be very interesting and fun.
Yes, we're very excited about this and we're all very stressed out. Or at least Ben has got it all under control, but I'm just like, oh God, what did I forget to do? But luckily Benito's in charge, so we are a smooth running ship. And then now I want to turn over to a really cool thing that Specialist Christian Wheeler spearheaded this year with a lot of support from Benito and Juliet, which is our first digital year in review. So we wanted to take a second to preview this for the group. This is going to be published on the city website later this week. You know, we learned that once you publish it, you can't change it ever again. So we wanted to make sure we gave ourselves a second in case there were some extra things we wanted to tweak. But we're going to kind of go through this as a group and show some of the aspects of this story map. And Christian, I don't know if you do want to drive this so you can show the map function or what's, or do you want me to just do the scroll? Okay, I can be directed to scroll while the team narrates. So we'll maybe start with this really cool
And I'll go
map
first.
feature. Go ahead.
Okay, so well, the first thing I wanted to point out is when I first was getting things over to Christian, I was like, oh, we've done a few things, we haven't done much. Because I mean, yes, we have been busy, but then Christian did this, and if you notice, we're all over the map. Making sure that sustainability is being seen throughout the community with various events. So quite literally from the north, south, east, west, we're everywhere, which is something that I really wanted us to do when I first started here, was make sure that no matter where we are, sustainability is being input in some way and we're being seen, because with us being seen, then people know we're actually here. And one of my favorite things was the community cleanup, which is number one, if LP can click on that one. And of course, it'll let you know there that it was the first one we hosted. We had a good turnout with a lot of our teens there. We had, I believe, 30 registered with about 42 people showing up in total. Some of them did not stay for the whole thing. Of course, there's Christian with our nice giveaways. But so that was one of my favorite events. And then we can go back. And then, of course, the Desert Highland Asphalt art that was kind of just handed to us in a way that it ended up being great for me, because we got to kind of do that beautiful piece of art, and sustainability was just included, and they trusted us to do it. So that was something that I really enjoyed, and I hope to do more similar things like that in the future for us as well. Maybe cool, throw in some sustainable art pieces, maybe a nice little earth or something, but that's definitely something I would want to do all over again.
Cool. All right. Anything else that you guys want to highlight on that?
Let's see. I don't take up all the time. Go ahead, Christian.
I would say we did a lot of new events for the first time, which was really cool. So hopefully we can do them again.
Oh, we're doing a lot more.
And this, those of you who were here in season 1, which is LP by myself, will know that that a lot of these events were not happening during that time. So this is also just a testament to Benito's great work in his first year. He's now completed his first full year with us. So thank you very much. And more years to come. Right. And now, do you want me to go to the numbers or?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, turn it over to Christian to talk numbers.
So we kind of compiled the year since last Earth Day into kind of some statistics and what we've done. So we've shredded and recycled over 12.5 tons of paper last year, and that's just from our shredding event. So it's not including all the other stuff outside of that. We planted 93 trees, 93 city maintained trees. We hosted over 8 sustainability related events. We've secured over $1 million in grant funding, which is still on the way. Issued over $500,000 in tech conversion rebates. We began development, the outreach stage of the 4 miles of new city street bike lanes. That's Racket Club and South Palm Canyon. We reached 95% occupancy at the community garden. We have the 3 new shade structures in Baristo, Demuth, and Victoria Park. And then CVAC has started the construction of the 8.5 miles of CV links just within the city of Palm Springs. And then we've also issued 383 solar panel permits for homes of business in the city. So that's pretty much our year in numbers.
And just a couple of things I want to highlight there. One is you'll notice a lot of departments are represented here. So one of the things that's kind of been part of my strategy is we can't do this alone. You're looking at 3/4 of the team right here. That's not a lot of people. So the more that we can continue to empower our departments to take sustainability actions, the stronger our work will be. So a lot of these things like the solar permits, that's, they've implemented an instant solar permitting function through the building department, or the tree planting is coming through Public Works with a new trees contract that's much more aggressive in terms of expanding through, and shade structures with the Parks Department. So all of those things are happening kind of. We support and amplify, but we didn't have to do those things, which is great success. And I also here wanted to just, I think I maybe mentioned this a couple months ago, but that $1 million in grant funding is all due to Mr. Christian Wheeler here. So I want to just continue to acknowledge that great success, and we will continue to do more. And then finally, so just future planning stuff. Did you want to talk about this, or you want to?
You can do it.
I don't care.
Oh, you wrote it.
Okay. Yeah, so this is kind of the letter from us, slash, I wrote it at 4:30. Really, as we've all talked about here, our circumstances kind of surrounding this work continue to become more urgent and uncertain. So we all are aware of our kind of political environment that we exist in. It's a very different funding and federal policy picture than it was this time last year. People's bills are higher. We have some of the highest energy costs in the country. We can't pay for food in the same way that we used to. All of these things become more important polycrises that really intersect in thinking about what our future looks like as a community. And so for us, that's really important to think about how does climate work allow us to design that holistic, equitable future that we all need to be moving toward as we're thinking about more and more interlocking crises every day. I wanted to also make it very explicit that despite the changing federal posture on some of these issues, we are probably even more committed, because I'm petty, to making sure that our work is so equity centered and so equity focused and so intentional about how we're making sure that we're empowering all of our communities, we're redressing historic wrongs, and et cetera. So we want to make sure that that's really clear as we're going forward. So if it means we lose some money, we lose some money, but we haven't lost any yet. So one of the things I mentioned in here is we're going to have to get a little craftier in some ways to probably do some of this work, but it's still happening, and we're mad now, so it's gonna make it easier and more fun. So some of the principles that we talk a lot about as a team and how we're kind of going forward to 2025, I really tried to make these all the same length, but they didn't all go the same length. So really just thinking about those multiple benefit programs, things that have multiple positive aspects. So does it help people save money and increase their climate comfort in their home? Does it provide better access to summer walking and biking because it's also expanding shade and habitat, et cetera? Also looking at those foundational choices that make future sustainable choices more possible, strengthening our natural environment resilience, which we're really excited to do more of that this year. And then, like I said, prioritizing in-centric equity. None of these things on this future projects list are going to surprise this subcommittee or this commission, because you've heard all of them. But it's heat and shade, it's buildings, it's waste production, and it's nature. So we've got a long list here of some of those different things, all of which you all will know, but maybe other people reading this might not know as well. And we are grateful for the collaboration of this committee as we continue to move forward. So happy to answer any questions. You'll also see the team down here with us. This is the one picture of Corbus. Ignore the wrinkled tablecloth. That was probably my fault. I was probably supposed to iron it, but I didn't. And yeah, any questions or any things that you would hope to see on here that maybe we forgot because we were so busy and we didn't put them? Any other thoughts on this? Go ahead.
I like that you've done this, and it shows what a good job everyone's doing, the staff. And for me, and I think it with a lot of people too, it shows a number tells a story, and you're telling a great story of how we're working hard, and I think our community is kind of in with it. So I support it and I applaud it. So thanks.
Other comments?
The only thing I want to say is, I don't know how you're doing that with the team. So I want to commend you on
Thank
it.
you.
I'm
Yeah.
really impressed.
Thank you so much. Well, we luckily we continue to expand the web, so we have little allies in lots of different places. But the team's really been working hard this year, and I look forward to giving them a Saturday off next week. One, actually, Ben has stacked us in a healthy way. We were busy and then quiet and busy and quiet, so he's been keeping our mental health.
What other ways are you going to share this?
Yeah, good question. So this is going to be embedded on our city website. So once we make it public, it's kind of still in our editing zone right now. So we'll have it on the website. We'll be sending it around to our council members, out through kind of and to some of our local press contacts as well. But we're happy to share it with 1PS or any other groups that you think would be interested. So it'd be a nice kind of reminder for us to look at, see what we've been up to. Any other things that I missed there that we've talked about? Sharon?
Great, thank you very much for the excellent presentation. Next item on the agenda is old business, and the first item is energy efficient upgrade ordinance.
Yeah, I'm gonna give us some of these 30 minutes back. No updates to report. So we're waiting on an updated model code from the statewide team, that will help us get some of that streamlining. I think I talked about it the last meeting. It's like, we know some things are confusing. We can make some certain things easier. We're hoping to do that. One thing I do want to flag that I will be bringing back to the climate action subcommittee, there is a state piece of legislation, AB 306. It's always bad when I memorize the number. That's when you know it's bad for me personally. So AB 306 comes out of the efforts to speed rebuilding after the LA wildfires. So they're hoping to reduce burdens and barriers to people reconstructing homes, and reduce those costs. What AB 306 does, however, is it basically freezes the state building code for 2 cycles, and it precludes cities from passing reach codes, which, as you all know, going to make me a little upset. Because reach codes, whether we move forward with the specific residential reach code we've been looking at or not, whatever form that ends up taking, reach codes are a really powerful tool that cities have to reduce building emissions in our own communities. As we've talked about in this group before, we have limited powers on transportation. Waste, we also have fairly limited powers on, but the state is pretty aggressive on that too, and so we have a lot to do to kind of implement their policy there. But buildings is one of the places where we have a lot of local control as a municipality. And this is something that, extends beyond just energy efficiency. It can include things like fire safety, accessibility, a number of different important life safety issues. Our buildings folks have also been concerned because as you freeze the whole building code cycle, that means you have 2 of those 3-year cycles. So it's effectively 10 years where you don't get those life safety upgrades that you would get in a standard code update cycle. So things like improvements to fire requirements and defensible space and all of those different things that are existing in the current building code would not be updated for 10 more years. And also the data shows that if you build an all-electric house, you save like 15 to 20% of the cost because gas connections are really expensive. So it's one of those things that it's like, yes, it's intended to reduce costs theoretically, but it may not be the best way to do that. So there's some questions about kind of where the intent of this is coming from. You can make a lot of different arguments. Most cities are pretty against this happening. We are probably going to bring forward an opportunity for the commission to file a comment to the state process or join a sign-on letter with other cities. So that's something we'll talk about in next month's climate action, give the group a chance to discuss that. And so potentially you could have something to look at in the next meeting. So that's something that's stressing me out a little bit. But so that could just kind of change the dynamic for what tools we have available, and it would reduce probably our best tool, at least for certain kinds of building work, that we have as municipalities to push toward our climate goals. So really hoping we don't lose that. So that's the latest one. With that,
Push what, go forward.
yes, yeah, good. Any questions or thoughts? Yes.
When is the vote coming up in legislature?
Good question. So AB 306 was passed out of the assembly because it was a speaker priority bill. It has not been scheduled for a hearing yet in the Senate. So we're tracking it. We don't know yet what there's not as much urgency in the Senate as there was in the assembly because it was a speaker bill. So they got it through pretty quickly, so we don't have that timeline yet, but we'll share that with the group once we know that.
So I'm just curious, why did they decide to do that statewide instead of just doing the fire zones?
It's a really interesting question. There are theories, but no clear answers for that.
Seems odd.
Yeah, it's kind of like, is this, I don't know if anybody's read Naomi Klein on the shock doctrine. Basically like the idea that after a disaster is kind of when a lot of actors try to make things happen really quickly. I feel like it's probably some sort of like shock doctrine shakeout thing where maybe there were a number of different interests aligned in some different way, and it kind of came together as this. I agree with you that it doesn't seem like the best tool necessarily. It's also possible that maybe the final version will have amendments that might limit it a little bit more specifically to specific areas or specific aspects that they want to make sure that are preserved. But as written, it's pretty broad. I agree with you that it doesn't make a lot of sense.
Yeah.
As LP said, something that we've been talking about in detail at the climate action subcommittee, so it'll be brought forth as a. Yeah.
Any other questions on that? Okay. Christian, want to talk about trees?
Yes, so there's not much to update. We do have a kind of final version. We're just waiting for the city attorneys to do their final edits. We already know where it would live in the municipal code. So once that's finished, we will send that to you guys and vote on it. The other thing that we do have an update on is we have started the process of the recommended species list and the technical manual, so that will be ready in the next month and a half. Before the end of the fiscal year.
Would you mind re-summarizing what the technical manual is?
Yes, so the species list, that'll just be a city approved recommended species, so when someone wants to, take out a tree and they need to replant, they should be looking from this list, unless they get authorized approval from the planning director. And then it'll have different kind of specs, the size, canopy, if it's prone to pests, if it's good for shade, if you can plant it near power lines, parkways, different things like that. And then the technical manual will be a best management practice document, so really highlighting when you should be pruning a tree, kind of what season to plant trees, watching for nests, different things like that, and that would be available to the public to reference as they're working with trees and for landscapers, things like that. So there'll be accompanying documents with the ordinance.
Thank you. Questions? Includes old business, move on to new business. The first item is the environmentally preferable purchasing policy update.
Yeah, exactly. I can just unfreeze my little thing. Okay, so sorry to scour, you've seen most of this before, so just pretend you didn't. So I'm gonna give a little update on the environmentally preferable purchasing policy, which we've been suggested to call EP cubed, but for some reason that's not taking, so I keep saying the full name out loud. So just as a refresher, this policy was formally adopted in 2023. It's not technically a law, because it's a policy. We have authority under our procurement ordinance to adopt certain kinds of purchasing policies. So the council has reviewed and approved this, but they didn't have to like pass it as a law, so it didn't go through like the readings and stuff like that. That does also mean that it's relatively easy for us to update and make changes over time. So it's still pretty new. So we haven't made any significant updates to it yet. But this policy has effectively been on the books since around this time, about 2 years ago. And what the policy does is, I've worked on ones in the past that are 800 pages. This one is not, it's like 14. So it's much easier to read. But it does a couple things. It collects all the current requirements. So there are state laws and things like that we do follow here, and some of our own local ordinances that are collected here. And then it also makes a number of recommendations on how to make our purchases more environmentally friendly. And as we talk a lot about in this group, environmentally friendly can mean a lot of different things at a lot of different times. So just quickly here, this summarizes what are the different definitions of environmentally friendly. Environmentally preferable purchasing focuses a little bit more than some of our other work on health risks. So things like what choices minimize the health risk to the city, to residents, to visitors, et cetera, by purchasing and using fewer toxic things. So that's things like chemicals, pesticides, paint, VOCs and paints, all those different kind of things. So this is a little more public health-y than some of our other work is, but that's kind of EPP policies are generally kind of oriented toward that. And then it also includes a lot of the things around reducing impact of climate change. So things like, making sure we're buying electric vehicles where it's feasible, going to low water landscaping, et cetera. So those things are also included here, switching to desert community energy carbon free for new, et cetera. So it kind of does both. And when we do our staff training, because we often get a question of just like, okay, I buy pencils. How do I think about that? Like, how do I know whether a purchase is required to comply with EPP or not? This is kind of the question matrix that I ask people to go through in their brains. Could this product impact my health, my neighborhood's health? Is there a healthier alternative to this product? If this got in the water, would it be bad? Preferably no, but sometimes yes, I guess. We do use like motor oil and stuff. Does this product use or generate carbon emissions? Is there a version of this that uses recycled content? So that's a big one for a lot of our internal purchasing. Is like, is there a recycled content version of this box I have to buy? And then is this something where there might be state laws that apply to it? I also tell people just like, what are you not allowed to buy? So a lot of things like avoiding certain chemicals, that like the glyphosate that Paul mentioned in his presentation, that is specifically called out there. No styrofoam, please. And then figuring out how we're using things like healthier materials, even down to apparel and textiles. So that's a recommendation, not a requirement, but looking at recycled content or natural materials for apparel and textiles. So this is kind of the quick and dirty of just like, what can you buy? No plastic straws, please kill me. No foam, no glyphosate. How is this actually implemented? So we have a remarkably decentralized purchasing environment here, which is interesting. My background is in a remarkably centralized purchasing environment. Here, a number of different people are empowered to purchase through a number of different mechanisms. So we have department administrators who do a lot of purchasing, especially for things like office supplies, but also some of these things are bought through contracts. Maybe we have like a janitorial services agreement that does require them to follow the EPP, but we don't get receipts for like every bottle of cleaner that they buy. So we don't necessarily know we're not approving every single purchase of something under a contract in some cases. So this is kind of where we have good or easy, medium, and hard access to data about this. So we do have citywide accounts for things like Amazon and Office Depot. They do track sort of greener products, but for them, their greener product labels are not necessarily one-to-one with EPP categories. Same with Amazon's Climate Pledge Friendly. That basically means it has something to do with the climate. Usually that's recycled content. Maybe it's like some of those textile certifications, a number of different things that can do that. Harder to access are like individual purchasing card purchases. So it's like somebody goes and gets like a team shirt at their promotion. I don't know what was in that. Like there's no way for me to know that they even bought that. And then the hardest thing to find is those products that are purchased by manufacturers. So when we think about things like pest management, that really requires us to be in great communication with our public works department, which we are working on doing. I will say it hasn't been the first thing that we've been tracking with EPP because we've had some state requirements to implement around recycled paper, which we're doing pretty well on. But it is something that we're going to be working on over the summer. In working with our public works team to identify our highest priority pest reduction areas. Our parks department is also really excited about raptor poles and things like that. We've got a gopher problem, a bit JOJ that we need to maybe solve with some birds. So we're hoping to convene, this is kind of like a summer research project for our team. So looking at where are we experiencing pest incursions, pest issues, doing some of that work with like the team mentioned around, do we have unsecured dumpsters in the parks? Do we have entrance superhighways for certain buildings? What pesticides are we currently using through our pest management contracts? So we've got some ideas and we have some allies well placed in various departments who I don't want to name in case they get their identity, their identity needs to remain a secret. So that's something we're going to be working on, but we don't have great data on that yet, but we hope to get some more over the next couple months. So my main takeaways I basically do like an annual evaluation of this policy. Paper, we're doing pretty good. It's really easy to find compliant paper, because we have recycled content thresholds that are actually set in SB 1383, which is the same composting law. It does a bunch of other stuff, including saying we have to use recycled content toilet paper at city facilities. It's really easy because that's like a percentage, right? It's like, okay, you can say, is it 50% recycled? Then that's sufficient, great. And that's easy then also for us to track because most of our paper is bought through those kind of bulk, whether it's Office Depot or Amazon, buy a lot of our paper through that. So that's pretty easy. One of the things that gets a little harder is that not every product has that easily identifiable of an EPP compliant replacement. So like one of the things when I was going through the Amazon purchasing list is like we buy horse vitamins because we have horses at the police department. What's an EPP compliant horse vitamin? Like maybe there isn't one. Or like whiteboards, is there a recycled content whiteboard that's easily findable on Amazon? What's the certification that goes for that? It's like, maybe there isn't. So some things it's really easy to say this is the better or worse environmental option. Other things it's a little harder. So we've been focusing on those things that do have certifications, like for cleaning products and paper, etc. Makes it much easier. And then the categories for the next couple of years that we're focusing on include continuing to expand our recycled content procurement and then also looking at this IPM, pesticides, etc. And then as we go, we will probably want to update the policy to give more clarity on certain product types. So the policy is pretty general as is, and for most things, I mean, it does set paper margins, like sizes, that's not very general. But some of the things are so general as to maybe not necessarily be that helpful. So we'll probably be updating that as we get some more data on what's available, and then just making sure we're continuing to expand our scope to align with the best available data. So that's kind of where we're at on environmentally preferable purchasing. I'm happy to answer any questions either about how we've been doing so far, or if you want to talk a little bit more about implementation or future pathways, happy to go wherever the commission thinks is best. Yes, Commissioner.
Does this policy falls under sustainability because other departments will be purchasing stuff, and do you have to like take a note of them, or you are the sole responsible?
It's a good question. So we have a great collaboration with our procurement department on this. The procurement department is even smaller than us. So it's currently 3 people. And so I think we do our best to try to get this in up front. But it is a difficult task. So we do work on training our administrators every year. We have like an admin training series where they get this kind of talk through, and then we kind of do spot checks on things like like I do my annual checks on like how close did we get to the the Office Depot like green rating, and that kind of thing. So it is a bit scattershot, but we work with procurement and our department administrators as our main partners on this. Questions or thoughts? Okay, great.
Great, thank you very much. The next item under new business is bird strike prevention. The subcommittee has provided a presentation and a report which you had in your agenda packet to read. Commissioner Quick is going to go through the presentation.
Steve, 1 second, I'll get this set up for you. Do you want to just tell me when?
Yeah, because there's not that many slides, so, yeah. And this dovetails nicely with the Desert Wildlife Center, so I'm glad you gave your presentation first, although my slide deck is not as fancy as yours, so now it's gonna make mine look a little plain. But basically, I think I gave just a short summary at a meeting in the past where the reason why I wanted to bring this issue up is because for many years I'd have birds striking our windows, and it's very upsetting to hear that thump. You go outside and you see a dead bird lying by your window. And what I was shocked by, and if you go to the next slide, is when I found out that there's over 1 billion birds that die a year in the United States. It's the second highest mortality for birds is striking windows. The first one is cats. So I was surprised by that too. The cats kill over 3 billion birds a year, but the second worst cause is striking windows. And I think the Coachella Valley is an important area to focus on this because we're part of the Pacific Flyway. And so we literally have millions of birds coming through in the spring and the fall. And I know that's very sad. That's like the coyote we saw before. But those are some dead birds that have struck windows. And those birds were struck high rise and fell at the sidewalk of a high rise. High rises cause about 50% of the bird strikes, but 50% are from 4 stories or below. So it's not just high rises that all these birds are dying on, they're actually, single family homes and apartment buildings. So you can go to the next slide, please. So when I was going on this journey trying to figure out how to prevent bird strikes on my own windows, I found that there's a lot of different ways of making your glass and glazing visible to birds. So a lot of the solutions are decals and strings you can hang in front of your windows. On the left-hand side, you can see that's actually a mirror that I have in my yard. And birds were kind of flying into the mirror too. I didn't have any dead birds, but even if you have a bird that flies and bumps into a pane of glass and flies away again, it can still die, of internal injuries later on. So just because you don't see a dead bird at the bottom of your window or your door or your glass railing doesn't mean that it's not going to die. If you hear that thump, that might be a bird that's going to die later on. So I put these decals on the mirrors, and that stopped that. I would see impressions of birds. You don't see them, dead at the bottom, you'd see, you've seen those pictures of bird wings, on top of, on windows. Well, that's what I was seeing on these mirrors, and so that took care of that problem. These other two photos are just what other people did. They're the one in the middle are strings that are hanging down that are called Ocopian bird savers. The one on the right is a door because it's not just windows, it's actually glass doors and sliders that also are a problem. So those need to be treated also. Next slide, please. Another way to prevent bird strikes is to install anti-reflective pattern, opaque or fritted glass. And these are some examples of the different types of glass you can get. Architects have access to it, window fabricators have access to it. The one on the left is a pattern glass that is a little bit less obtrusive, so you just see dots. The one in the center is a fritted pattern going down, so that's in a commercial building. And the right is a more opaque pattern that you can also get, but there's lots of different types of glass out there that you can use to prevent bird strikes. And if you get the next slide, please. And what I found that's most aesthetically pleasing, because I did try some of those decals and stuff on my windows, and it's not aesthetically pleasing, like just the bottom line. You see lines, you see things in review, and especially in Palm Springs, we like to look out at our desert gardens and, be able to see without impeded view. So what I did, and these are my windows and doors at home, I'm not the center one, but the left-hand side, what I did is I put up screens, bug screens on both the opening part and the stationary part. And so that worked really well aesthetically. You look outside your window and you're used to seeing the screen, and you can see out, there's no obstruction really. So I really like that solution. I also did it on the right-hand image. There is our most problematic window, which is a window in the front of our house that you can see through to the back of the house. And so birds were striking that all the time, and was the worst window. And even this spring, a bird struck the window, even though we had the screen on. So I've heard that the screens allow birds to see the windows fairly well. But every once in a while, you get a species of bird that does not see it, or if you have a passive, they'll still try to fly through it. So what I ended up doing with that center window is pushing the window out with spacers, the screen out with spacers. So I actually saw this happen. A bird then also flew into that, but trampolined off. So it's like, if you create a little trampoline, that's actually the best. That's like 100% safe window. And so that sent me on another journey, figuring out how you can actually buy screens that are kind of like that. And that's what that center slide is that's a golf ball screen that protects your window from golf balls. And I knew nothing about this until like just a few weeks ago. And so you can get these kind of box screens like that, and they install them on, and they're made for golf balls, but they're great for birds too. So I haven't seen them from the inside. They look kind of dark maybe, but you can still see outside your window. So my recommendation would be to do screens. They're like not that expensive. They're easy to install. The one on our slider there on the left-hand side, there's actually a little track that they did to put the screen in, and it's probably about 6 inches away from the slider. And so if any bird hits that, they're just gonna be trampling off also. So I felt like, we did our job, and now our house is bird safe. Next slide. So what we were mentioning before is that the Coachella Valley is part of the Pacific Flyway. And so basically what I recommend is doing sort of evaluation of a house or apartment building or any other kind of building, and determine which windows and doors and glass railings are the worst. Because sometimes you have windows that don't need this. They don't have bird strikes on them. But other windows, like our front window where birds were trying to fly through all the time, was really bad. So we had to do, put the screen out, make a trampoline. Other windows we don't have bird strikes on, so we don't do that. But in the springtime, we do have a window that gets bird strikes on it only in the spring. So what we do is we put the Ocopian bird savers on those windows. It's not aesthetically pleasing, but we can handle it for a couple months in the spring. And then we take them off, and that seems to work. So, since we are through the flyway, I recommend that, April and May, September and October are peak bird months. So if you do have windows that you want to see out most of the year, but you do get some bird strikes on, that you just do something with those on those months. For landscaping, there's a few things people can do. The one I just really wanted to focus on here, though, is that it's counterintuitive, but if you have bird feeders or hummingbird feeders, you want them within 3 feet of a window. It seems like you'll have birds, flying into the window trying to get to the feeder, but it's actually the opposite. They're coming to the feeder, they're gonna stop, be at the feeder. Like the feeder is between 3 feet and 30 feet. That means that they're gonna be flying around and they're gonna be flying out from the feeder and hit windows. So that's the most important sort of landscaping thing. And then just to reiterate what the Desert Wildlife Center said, do not trim your trees in April and May. The nesting is going on, and while I have that on my mind, another thing about the dumpsters is ravens. It attracts ravens, and ravens are multiplying in the desert because of dumpster diving, and they are eating baby birds and eggs. So bird populations are going down even in our area because ravens are impacting the population. And specifically, it's because of dumpsters. We would not have this many ravens around. I mean, you've all seen them. There's like, hundreds and, big murders flying around and like all over the ground. So dumpsters enforcing dumpster code would really help the bird population also. It's another benefit of doing that. Another thing that people can do, we have outdoor blinds that we pull during the daytime, just to get heat off the windows, so that really helps too. Yeah, excellent. So where this all is leading is, we would like to get the commission's input and the department's input on how we can sort of promote educational campaigns about what people can do to make their buildings bird safe. And so Benito, of course, will have some great input on this, how we can get the word out about what people can do. Another thing, question we have is, does the commission want us to go to the next step of coming up with either voluntary or obligatory regulations about new commercial buildings? A lot of cities have ordinances, some are voluntary, some are obligatory, about using bird safety glass, bird-friendly glass, and architectural design. So that would be something that I could work on, and maybe Commissioner Alexander might want to be involved in it.
I thought I already was.
Yeah, so the next step of, working on that and maybe coming to the commission again with more of a report about what we might recommend for. We could just do voluntary at the beginning, where we just have something the building department gives out to architects, or new building, contractors. That says, this is what we recommend. And I reached out to the, building, manager, maybe, I'm not sure what his title was, for the College of the Desert, after they had already, designed it. And I said, have you considered using these kind of materials in the design? He said, oh, we would have if we knew about it. So I think it's just even educationally, if we can just do maybe a voluntary, recommendations, that might be a good way of doing it. And there's a lot of ordinances I've looked at, and our subcommittee have looked at that talk about best practices for that, if we wanted to go that route, as the next step.
Keep going. Okay,
I think that, is there another one? I don't know.
that's it.
That's it.
Okay. Thank you. Questions and comments in the group? Thank you, Commissioner.
This may be silly, but is there, in your research, is there a direction? Like north, south, east, west, where birds typically might fly into? I don't know if they're heading north, south, is it a greater number of birds? I know they fly all over, but I don't know.
No, that's a good
There's,
question.
like,
Yeah, there's no real directional aspect of it. It's mostly just what the glazing looks like. So if there's a reflection that's really prominent, they will just fly into it, not seeing it. Or like I mentioned, if there's a pass through and a bird can see, through the window to another, outdoor area, they'll try to fly through it. So it's really just the location of the glazing and the time of day makes a difference because the reflectivity and what the vegetation is around it.
And I just want to add, like out where I live, we have a lot of water features. So we attract a lot of birds and we have buildings that glasses on both sides, so that's drawn them in.
Mhm.
Any other comments or questions?
So it seems to me that probably the easiest thing to do is in moving forward would be the second bullet up there to develop educational campaigns. You have a lot of information there already and putting that together in some kind of format. Is that something that your subcommittee would like to continue with?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And then Benita, we work with you on sort of coming up with how we're to disseminate the campaigns and stuff.
I think that sounds like a good next step is maybe the three of y'all coordinate a conversation,
Definitely.
look at some opportunities there for some material.
And
I'm
then-
starting to think we need a month for every topic. Bird month,
Yes.
pest month.
And then for the second part of it, coming up with recommendations for building
Mhm.
materials, do you want us to go forward and like just put something like that together and then present it to?
I think that's something that the one next step I would have would be to talk with our building and planning departments. Because also the zoning code update is ongoing. I know this is more of a building code thing, which of course, if we freeze the building code, we can't do anything, but in terms of those educational materials, they would be good points of feedback for us in terms of connecting with that community. So maybe Ben and I will talk about when we think it's right to hold that together. I think if you have any examples from other cities of how, especially if the education, I would say like starting with what kind of materials can be developed to educate the building community, because then that would feed into whatever requirements we might put in. Because I think we generally have seen more appetite here to like, do we pilot something and show, because then we'll understand how much more it cost on this particular building or what the impact was or that kind of thing. So maybe if you all can gather some examples, Ben and I will talk to building and planning and figure out the right time to have that conversation. I'm also curious what citizen science data we have in the community, because I know in bigger cities, they report on DBIRD, like if there's big collision sites with skyscrapers and that kind of stuff, but do we know across our community where the hotspots are? Is that possible for us to gather more information on that? Like, are there certain types of buildings here in Palm Springs that have a lot of bird collisions? Do we hear anecdotally about that beyond just sort of, I know our mid-century buildings are very prone, and Miramar might be a good example as of some of those. Yeah. Because I'm also thinking of like, is there a way to narrow it in both on an advocacy side from what we might develop for builders, but also for our communities? Like, do we really just target, like, if you have a visual pass through, fix it? Like, it's like, how can we make the problem small is almost my other question. So do we know kind of what other
I think the issue would be is if people were having problems, that they might see a dead bird, they don't see a dead bird, and they don't think, oh, it happened 5 times, they're not aware. I think
sure.
the first thing is educating, this is an ongoing problem, you should report it, you have to know about it.
Sure.
When I talk to Maryland, they say, oh, we have it all the time this way.
No one seems that stressed.
Yeah.
Gotcha, okay. Yeah, so maybe that's another opportunity for us to think about how we might get to know more about the problem, the shape of the problem.
Yeah.
Cause that would then inform, kind of to your point, it's like not every window is a problem window. So which windows are the ones we want to focus on for foregoing, if we were to do something that's either educational or code in the future.
Yeah,
Or they would help.
San Francisco has a very, very good document
Yeah, they do.
about
Okay.
that.
Awesome,
Yeah.
yeah, so that would be.
So all of San Francisco, they have an ordinance that it's very, has examples and diagrams and scientifically driven data, so.
Because that makes me think of kind of the approach that we're taking with the tree ordinance, which is there are certain things we're regulating, but we're also publishing the technical manual, which is more specific but it's a guidance document, it's not a requirement. So it's like, do we start with something like a technical manual for new buildings or something? But you've had you're saying that for a minute.
Oh.
Go for it.
Sorry, just kind of killing two birds.
Two birds with one
Save two
Yeah,
birds.
there you go,
Sorry.
yeah.
I was trying to be funny. Is when looking at some of these homes, if they're retrofitting, it's also looking at, hey, is there a way to make the house more energy efficient?
Right.
Are there, because there are, they design a lot of commercial buildings now with these exterior facades that give you light, but also protect it from the sun.
Yeah.
And I think that would probably have some sort of impact because these beautiful, well, I love the mid-century modern big windows. They're very hot in the summer.
Yeah.
So if you have to modify something in some way, it's like if you save birds, but you also make your house more comfortable. So it's like kind of working, you know, the glazing and the options that you gave were good, but are there other options or opportunities to do more than just, it's like you save birds and improve your structural whatever, so.
I like how you've already incorporated the multiple benefit principle
Yeah.
for 2025, so thank you.
And that is a good point, because all those options do reduce heat.
Right.
Because you're blocking the sun out of your home, coming into your home.
So it's a good, hey, you're doing this, but you're also, your bill's gonna go down because you're not gonna be as hot.
Even screens do that, even putting on a boat screen on the stationary part blocks, UV rays coming into your house.
I think on the citizen science parts, can we ask the community members, like when we are doing this educational campaign, say, hey, if you see a dead bird in your home, can you just put a tag on this map so we can collect that data? And around Prescott Preserve, I'm not so much involved with like outdoors and bird watching stuff, but there are some groups that are like go around for bird watching and everything. If we can involve them in our educational campaign, I think the word spreads around faster. And they
Looking at some of our community members who might have ties to some of those organizations.
And to your question, I think I should not clean the window so the birds can see the dirt. That too.
You should see mine.
Don't clean it. I think Northern Palm Springs is safe because it's too windy, it's always dirty, no matter how much you clean. It's gonna be there.
Test case that breaks the rule, virtually. Okay, so just to quickly summarize then in terms of next steps, so it sounds like communication for public outreach campaign, this triangle, we'll start a discussion there. Ben and I will talk about when the right time is to loop in our departments for just some feedback on what they think might be helpful. And if you all could share some of those best practices from other cities on the policy side, that's great. And then when we're talking about outreach campaign, think about incorporating a citizen science component as well to get to activate some of our engaged.
I think Don is still, he's just been
Yes.
under the weather.
Yeah, but he needs to
Absolutely.
resign from the subcommittee though,
Yeah.
so can we do two people? Okay, so.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
can be as many or as few as you want. It just can't be
Then I
more.
will carry the torch.
It just can't be more than, so it's gotta be under four. Okay, great. Anything else from anyone else?
Good work. Good work. I'd like to thank the subcommittee that worked for several months and you made a good presentation tonight. We have some good steps going forward. Thank you.
And how to use the phone.
Here's 7:05. The final item of the business is leaf blower enforcement. And this is another subcommittee that's been working for several months. We've been giving you updates monthly on what we've been working on, signs that put out, or for one thing. We've been planning on writing an article for news media. And the initial target was Desert Sun, as either a letter or a Valley Voice. And what we presented in the packet of the agenda pack, this meeting is probably the third or fourth iteration of a document that we wrote. We had a lot of good back and forth comments amongst the subcommittee, putting that together. We provided it to you, it's on the screen now. Um, and the objective of the meeting this evening is just to have the commission say, yes, please go forward. We would like you to, we would like you to send this out to the news media. As I mentioned, the initial thought was the Desert Sun. We'll need a motion. I'd like to make it broader than that this can go to other news media as well. But as a starting point, and hopefully you've all read it, as a starting point, have a motion to proceed and allow this to go out under the name of the commission to the news media. And then we'll have a motion in the second, and then we'll have a discussion about that, and then about if there's any changes, we can make an amendment to the motion or change the motion. So you all read it?
Yeah.
And then the objective here is to make it really high level. And the audience initially will be mostly homeowners, but it reiterates what has happened in the past in terms of the ordinance being passed, and the fact that there are still people using gas powered leaf blowers, and things can be done to change that. And we referred to fines, which is the negative part. We referred to rebates on equipment which have been available for a long time, and those are still available to help landscapers get the equipment they need. So with that, is there a motion?
I actually have a question.
Sure.
Can we ask questions about it, or do we need a motion?
Well, usually you have a motion in a second and then discussion. I guess it depends upon the nature of the question, but why don't you go ahead?
If we want to follow the process, I'm happy to wait.
I don't know that it's a rigorous process. It's what I understand the way to do it.
It's just, I think, more clarification for me. With this letter, has there been any discussion with the code enforcement folks and how, and I apologize, I haven't read the actual things, but are these fines already incorporated into that?
Yes.
Was there like a schedule? Like, I know we have grace periods to let people work into that new law, because like, so we've hit that point, so now
Oh, yeah.
this is kind of the next thing.
Yeah, folks have been receiving these, yeah.
So the code enforcement, they're ready to start doing this?
So they're already doing it, but
I just wanted to.
I'll make sure to flag it for them before, like, if the commission approves it tonight, so that they know they may get an influx of additional.
Yes, that was my.
Mostly want to just make sure it's on their radar. But yeah, they do issue these fines, as we've discussed in this meeting. Sometimes it can be difficult to get the conditions right, so they can issue the fine, because they have to be able to see it and confirm. Yes, we have a follow-up here. So yeah, so I'll make sure to give them a heads up if the commission approves it.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure.
But otherwise, yeah, it is technically correct. Yes, go ahead.
Yes, so I know in the past I've complained about enforcement publicly, and it got circulated around a little bit. So I did call on a house, and they actually gave their first letter. They actually showed
Wow,
up.
that's great.
Well, that's our leaf
Yeah,
blower.
uh-huh.
So I just want to commend them.
Was that your
for-
first success?
Yes.
Okay,
I'm
great.
excited about that. That happened.
Yeah, excellent. Glad that you were able to see the loop get closed.
Yes, so
So,
I commend code enforcement for getting there in time and
Great.
actually seeing it happen.
Yeah, because I know that it is a tricky enforcement of some of these real-time things, very hard. It's one of the things we always vexes us when we're thinking about some of this stuff, it's like, what's the actual enforcement path? But glad to see that you've had positive experience.
Yes, there were.
Did you?
I just have to follow on Commissioner Roberts' comments. The
Have we had a second for?
I don't know that we've taken a motion
We
yet.
haven't had a motion.
Yeah.
Oh,
Do we wanna do a motion?
or- I thought we had to do the discussion after the,
I don't know,
okay.
but we can. Do we want to just go ahead and do that now?
Well,
To make sure we're clear.
I think this was his question earlier,
Right,
clarification of what's in the letter. I don't think the process, I don't know that it's that rigid, but I think we can finish answering the comments that we have already made, but the schedule for the fines actually is a generic schedule for all sorts of ordinances within the city. And I wrote that paragraph, I just summarized that in our letter. The actual, requirement banning leaf blowers is actually in the noise ordinance.
Yeah.
And it's a separate paragraph in the noise ordinance that just says, yes, for leaf blowers. So with that, do we have a motion to? We have a motion
Motion to consider the letter for,
to approve,
to approve the letter to be sent to the Desert Sun.
to be sent to news media.
Oh, news media, okay.
Because we did talk about other media that we could use, that's where we want to be connected. Even though the original thought was the business.
Second.
And have a second.
Second. Okay.
So is there any discussion about relating to the motion and moving forward?
Just have a comment. I know initially, we've gotten a letter, I think, from a person that was very active. Bob Farron. And the chief consideration when 1PS took this on was the burden of the financial obligations for mostly the workers. And I think that it has evolved some. But I think along with this additional information and education, we need to still be cognizant of the fact that one of my board members in my neighborhood talked with his gardener, and he knew about the rebates or the ways of doing that, but he still thinks it's extremely expensive. The fact that they're not the ones paying the fines is one thing, and I think we just need to make sure that we have the most clarity as we can about this, because the economy is not getting better, and these folks are under a lot of pressure.
Right, and that is something that, you know, especially when we're thinking kind of like equity forward, we want to be thoughtful about. One of the issues that Ben and I have been talking about is right now it is currently a reimbursement process still, which can be difficult. It can take a long time to get all the paperwork right. You know, people may also be hesitant to reach out and ask us for certain things. You do have to be business licensed. There's a number of different issues, which would still apply even if we are moving to an easier process. But we've got some ideas that we've been working on that are not quite ready for prime time to reduce the friction of that process, to make it a little bit easier if somebody wants to go through and get approved. They don't have to go through that reimbursement process with us in the same way. So we're working on it. It's almost baked, not quite ready. But yeah, we want to be mindful of the precarity of some of the situations that we may be facing, and also just make that process easier where we have the power to do that. Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, so. This is going to take a time for the new process or like to evolve. But I think that needs to be in every single thing that goes out.
Right.
In both languages and also, yeah, English and Spanish. So after it goes through the regular media, we're going with our own kinds of leaflets or whatever that they definitely need to be in Spanish and English.
Right. Yeah, definitely. That's something that multilingual outreach is really key, especially to this particular program.
There are a lot of different scenarios we could have addressed. The thought was that this is a high level article getting facts out. This is what was passed, this is what's happening, this is what's available. And there certainly will be questions that we'll have to address going forward, but it would be too much to put into any initial article.
Just a comment, like, can we request PSDS, because they send their bill every 3 months, can we ask them to put it at the bottom of their bill, like give us some space where we can put this, hey, homeowner, this law is an implementation, just be mindful about that your gardeners are not using leaf blower.
We can. We generally try to keep that to waste only, but we can ask for sure.
And that's just one example of another.
Yeah.
Is there any other discussion? Are we ready for a vote? We have a
Yeah,
motion
let's
and
do
a
it.
second. All in favor of the motion, please raise your hand. So it's unanimous, it's the six that meets our forum, and voting. So we still have some work to do to get it ready to be sent out. I think probably will be some kind of city approval on. that.
Yeah, I wanna just make sure that they learn about it from us first as
Right.
opposed to the news. So we'll do that, and I'll just flag for code as well, right?
And it may make sense for our subcommittee to get together again to finalize it and also to talk about the concerns that we brought.
Thank you.
So, thank you very much. And that's the end of our new business of the last major item of the agenda. We next then move on to commissioner comments and main agenda items. There's a few that we've talked about in the past, so potential for agenda items in May. I think one we'll definitely do is the sustainability budget. The input that's gonna be made by the employee staff. We talked about a PSDS report on recycling compliance. Liz Fernandez from PSDS do that, and also to talk about high risk fire areas. And then also we can follow up on discussion about forming a pesticide subcommittee. So those are some potentials for the May meeting. And we'll have our agenda planning meeting on April 24th, Thursday at the Golden Pond.
We may have to scoot that one for this week. I'll follow up with you afterwards, just because there's an employee Earth Day festival
Okay,
at the same time, so we may want to do that next week if that's okay with.
just let me know.
Yeah.
We
We can
can
chat
be
after.
flexible. Change that.
Yeah, yeah, we'll make it work. I'm gone after next week, so.
Okay, yeah, we'll talk right after. the
Yeah,
meeting.
yeah.
Get it scheduled. Just this Thursday is a little hairy for our little team.
Just gonna go around the table and see if there are any additional comments or suggestions. Commissioner Butler.
I don't have anything.
I have one. I was driving around and due to the wind events, I saw a lot of trees that got uprooted that are on the city property. I'm all about like circular things, but I think in this case, I wanna go linear rather than buying a big tree, planting it and trying to like get it settled there while the birds are nesting. And all of a sudden it get uprooted and now we have to cover the damage to the property or replant it. Can we just look into it and say, we wanna plant smaller trees so they can establish themselves over a period of time to cut down the cost and to recover prevent some of the damage for everything.
Yeah, I think that's definitely something that we want to incorporate in our recommended species list, is thinking about the trees that are, trees that are adapted to our environment aren't always so tall. So maybe that's something that when we bring that back for discussion, we can look at that angle, but we'll be working with our public works and our arborists as well to get some of their experience about which trees have been doing good and where are we getting some squash. But yeah, and also if there are particular areas where you noticed a lot of impact or species that you noticed, that would be probably my recommendation.
Commissioner Alexander, I don't have anything. Commissioner Carl?
Thanks.
And okay. I think one thing we'll need to talk about, perhaps not next time, but actually probably in the next meeting, rescheduling the June meeting.
June meeting, yeah.
The event from the city.
And as folks start to assemble their summer calendars, I know we do tend to go down in numbers, at least 1 or 2 meetings. So if folks could start getting those regrets to me, just so or to me and Ben, to make sure we can track quorum. Because if there's only gonna be like 3 people at the June meeting anyway, then, we'll figure it out, or July, I know it's sometimes in the past. We do traditionally not meet in August unless there's an urgent item, but we generally don't event. Yeah, June, maybe we can propose the following Tuesday. Kind of like we did this.
That's a typical way to do it. We did it this far.
Right, we'll just have to check on room availability.
Subcommittees also.
Subcommittees don't, yeah, for attendance, it's a little bit less of an issue there, but if nobody's gonna be around, it's good for us to know, but maybe you can let the chairs of the subcommittees know.
So with that, the next meeting is scheduled for May 20th, 2025 at 5:30. Remember that there are cupcakes and cake in the family room. And is there a motion to adjourn this meeting?
I'll motion to adjourn.
Second,
A second.
Second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thanks, Kendall.